Well, Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today, and Catherine is your co-host today. And we just want to welcome all our family and friends that are here by phone or internet, or maybe you're watching the YouTube recording. We just want to invite everyone to go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com, and it will answer a lot of your questions that you might have about the calendar in the heavens. This today is part 4 of a series. We have done 1, 2, and 3. This is the last part we're going to do today, and the title is A Feast Keeper Asks, Is Lunar Sabbath in the Bible? And then we have the Lunar Sabbath defense. In this presentation, we'll give the arguments, and it's for you to consider the matter and determine who has scriptural evidence and who relies upon the writings of men. And the feast keeper, he wrote an article, Beware of the Lunar Sabbath. And in this dialogue, feast keeper will be doing and reading all the purple lettering, and I will be reading Lunar Sabbath Defense in the green lettering. And we will be standing on Scripture. And if there's no thus saith Jehovah or no 2 or 3 witnesses, no chain of textual evidence, and no support found in the Torah and the prophets, then it is false. And any historical evidence that agrees with Scripture is acceptable as supportive evidence to the truth. So then it's my privilege to admit it and tell others that it has no foundation of truth if it's not in Scripture or any of the above. Part 1, we did the objections to the lunar Sabbath. Part 2, does the Moedim prove lunar Sabbath? In Part 3, do pinpointed Sabbaths prove lunar Sabbath? So I hope you will go watch these to see all the Scripture proof.
Scriptures which declare the real Sabbath. A real problem with the lunar Sabbath doctrine is a lack of a clear explanation anywhere in Scripture. It would be different if there were 2 Scriptures that seemed to contradict one another, and we were trying to figure out why that seemed to be. But there's nothing in the weekly Sabbath pattern that contradicts the Scriptures. What day is Sabbath day?
Feast keeper. Oh, okay, sure. A feast keeper is Isaiah 28, 9, and 10 in your Scriptures, line upon line, precept upon precept, one text building upon another. It's not that difficult. The calendar of Jehovah is written in the heavens, and it is regulated by the sun or moon. And the moon regulates the appointed times of Jehovah, the first of which is the weekly Sabbath. Genesis 1:14 says that the moon is for signs and seasons, days and years. Psalms 104:19 says he appointed the moon for seasons. And Leviticus 23:1-3 says that the Sabbath is one of the feasts. It's a holy convocation.
I don't believe anyone reading, I don't believe anyone reading the Sabbath commandment in Leviticus 23 or Exodus 20 alongside the creation account is going to come up with a lunar Sabbath doctrine. There is no commandment anywhere in the Scriptures which says, on the day following the new moon of each month, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. You shall do this for 4 weeks. Then, depending on whether the new month has started, you shall not engage in commerce or paid work for 1 or 2 days. Then you shall reset your week. Into the 6th week shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath, a solemn rest pattern.
Well, I'll chalk this up to feast keeper being facetious. And it is true, no one reading Leviticus 23 or Exodus 20 would come up with this. But if you read Ezekiel 46:1, Exodus 20:8-11, Genesis 1:14-16, Psalms 104:19, Leviticus 23:1-3, Isaiah 66:23 and 2 Kings 4:23. It says exactly that. And the verse here to the left says that it'll come to pass from one new moon to another and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come to worship before me.
Obviously, Yahweh never said any such thing, but this is the commandment that most lunar Sabbath keepers follow. This is nothing more than a commandment of men because it is not found in the Scriptures anywhere.
Well, I think it's not too difficult to see that Feastkeeper is not being factual with either the evidence or the commentary.
Let's remember that Yahweh said, Deuteronomy 12, verse 32, whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it, nor take away from it. The lack of such a command is, in my mind, quite damaging to the lunar Sabbath doctrine. It basically means we need to assume that Yahweh thought people knew these things already and always would, so he didn't need to explain it. And then it has Deuteronomy 12:32 on the side.
Not at all the case. The lunar calendar and Sabbath was recorded all through Scripture. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament exclusively record the lunar solar calendar. And this is a case of the pot calling the kettle black. I have a chain reference that precisely spells out the lunar-based Sabbath, as well as other calendar references that destroy the idea that the Sabbath is anything other than lunar. Has Feastkeeper offered a single text that says that Saturday is a Sabbath, or that the Sabbath is every 7 days in an unbroken cycle? No, he hasn't.
But if Yahweh was expecting man to work 6 days and keep the Sabbath on the 7th day on an uninterruptible recurring pattern, it would be easy to see that all he needed to do was command us to do our work for 6 days and rest on the 7th. No further explanation needed, and that's exactly what he did. Exodus 20, verses 9 and 10, 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. Exodus 23, verse 12. 6 days you shall do your work, and on the 7th day you shall rest. That's 12a. Exodus 31, verse 15. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the 7th is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. Exodus 31, verse 17. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th day it and was refreshed. Exodus 34, verse 21. 6 days you shall work, but on the 7th day you shall rest. Exodus 35, verse 2. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the 7th day shall be a holy day for you, a Sabbath of rest to Yahweh. Deuteronomy 5, verses 13 to 14. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Verse 14. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim.
Well, that's strange. I did not read anything that said 7-day weeks run in an unbroken cycle. It seems to me that if Yah expected man to work 6 days and keep the Sabbath on the 7th day on an uninterrupted recurring pattern, it would be easy to see that all he needed to do was to command us to do our work for 6 days and rest on the 7th, and no further explanation needed. But he didn't. Scripture specifically and explicitly says that the new moon days are not counted as weekdays. They have to go somewhere in the month. And wherever they go, they are not weekdays. The Father could not say that the weeks are unbroken, and never did, because of the position of the new moon in his monthly cycle.
We start without any fanciful ideas and just take the Scriptures for what they say, not adding anything to it. We could only arrive at understanding that Yahweh's Sabbath falls on an uninterruptible 7-day weekly rotation. There really isn't room for any other possible interpretations. 6 days you labor, and you rest on the 7th.
The problem with this thinking is that it assumes that the week runs separately of the month, when in fact it runs concurrent with the month. The year consists of months, and a month does not begin in one year and end in another. The month consists of weeks, and a week does not begin in one month and end in another. A week consists of days, and a day does not begin in one week and end in another. First, our feast keeper wishes to present a week that runs separate of the monthly cycle and has no evidence other than the tradition of man to support this conclusion. Feast keeper, true love cannot tolerate false doctrine. I cry aloud, sparing not, because I love you. I refuse to leave you with a false doctrine to tickle your itching ears.
To further illustrate that a recurring pattern was intended, let's go back to the beginning of creation and find the Sabbath that Yahweh himself established. As we know, Genesis 1 details 6 days that Yahweh used to create the heavens and the earth. Each of those days consisted of an evening and morning. Yahweh said that each of the evenings and mornings were specific days of a week. When the 7th day came in Genesis 2, Yahweh said that he rested from his work, then blessed and sanctified that day. Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. Verse 2. And on the 7th day Elohim ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. Verse 3. Then Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which Elohim had created and made.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up. Yes, let's go back to Genesis 1. If there is a new moon introducing the 2nd month after creation, and there was a new moon introducing this very month, what do you suppose introduced the 1st month of Earth's history? New moon. Genesis 1, 1 through 2, and Ezekiel 46:1 proves that new moon day, the 1st day of every month, even the 1st month of Earth's history, is a 3rd category of day, not counted as a weekday. Most folks will say that light was the first thing created. But have you read Genesis 1, 1 to 2 lately? This was a creation event, all heaven and earth. Yet it took place during an unnumbered segment of time. Verse 2 does not end with, and there was evening, and there was morning, day 1. Why? Because this segment of time was not part of the creation week. It was a segment of time outside the work week, before the work week, as the work days are later numbered off in Genesis 1 as the creation week unfolds. The segment of time in Genesis 1, 1 to 2 was, in fact, the first new moon day, as new moon comes before the first work day. In Ezekiel 46:1, the temple gate is shut during each and every one of the 6 working days, but it is opened up each and every Sabbath and new moon. In the other parts that we've done, parts 1, 2, and 3, we have read Ezekiel 46:1 to 3 several times. And so also Amos 8:5, Isaiah 66:23, and 2 Kings 4:23 also prove that the days are a set-apart convocation, new moon day is. Sabbath and new moon days belong in a separate category apart from the 6 common work days. In Amos, the unscrupulous vendors are seeking to cheat the Israelites. But it is Sabbath and new moon, and Israel won't come out to buy their wares until a work day. Isaiah, we will worship Jehovah at the appointed times, not on work days. 2 Kings, the boy collapses in the field. His mother races out, scoops him up, and runs inside. There the boy dies in her lap. So she runs upstairs, places the boy on Elisha's bed, then runs to her husband, asking permission to take the donkey and the servant with her to go see the prophet, to which he inquires, "It's neither new moon nor Sabbath. Why do you want to go see him today?" Where was this man? In his field. What was he doing? He was working. And we have done a lot of videos about this, but this is a good video, 3 types of day in Scripture, and I'll leave that link below. Put the new moon day back in its rightful place in the lunar cycle, and suddenly, if one is going to go outside and looking at the Creator's clock, the lights in the heavens, the Sabbath will be announced by quarter phase moons before the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of each lunar cycle. There is simply no evidence in Scripture that the Sabbath is every 7th day in succession. There is simply no evidence in Scripture that Saturday is the Sabbath. Scripture says that the Sabbath is the 7th day of the week, period. But whose week? Yah's week or the pagan planetary week that was later adopted by Rome? Yah's creation week began the first month of Earth's history and began with a new moon day described in Genesis 1:1-2. That unnamed, unnumbered segment of time was dark, and it is not part of the 6-day work week. In this creation model, the Sabbath was indeed the 7th day of the week. It always has been, but it was the 8th day of the first month. It has always been that too, as well as the 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the lunar month. And over here to the left, you'll see that the month starts out with the moon in the dark phase, and then on the 8th day, it would be in the first quarter. Halfway through the month, the full moon is the second Sabbath, the 15th day, and the third quarter, the last Sabbath, the middle, they're the 22nd day of the month, the third week, and then it goes back to no light on the moon for the 29th day. So this calendar is in the heavens, and it always has been in the heavens.
Later, when giving the 10 Commandments, Yahweh said in Exodus 20, verse 8-11, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." Verse 9, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Verse 10, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh Elohim. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Verse 11, excuse me, for in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Now please pay close attention to what Yahweh has said. He blessed and sanctified one day. Twice he called it the Sabbath day, and twice he called it the 7th day. Meditate on this a moment. The fact that Yahweh blessed and sanctified one specific day clearly demonstrates that the cyclic pattern is to follow. If that cyclic or recurring pattern is ever interrupted by extra days, the one specific day, the 7th day, disappears.
The 7th day of what? I'll just interject there, Peacekeeper. The 7th day of what? The Creator's week or the pagan 7th day planetary week?
If Yahweh wanted to sanctify and bless the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the month, he would need to say that he blessed and sanctified specific days of the month. In other words, the blessing and sanctifying would have been in the context multiple days of a lunar month, not one specific day of a 7-day week. Thus, the fact that there is one day called the Sabbath demonstrates that you can't interrupt the week. And then over to the left, it has the calendar with the, the names of the days of the week, which, we believe that they're named after pagan gods, the different sun gods.
Interestingly enough, when one acknowledges the new moon as a third category of day and not a day of the week, and go outside and look, he will discover that the Sabbaths are announced by the phases of the moon. So this is how to look for the phases that announce the moon, announce the Sabbath. First quarter, the moon is seen directly overhead at sunset the evening of the 7th. And that would be announcing the 8th day as a Sabbath. Full moon, the moon rises in the east at or after sunset the evening of the 14th, announcing the 15th as a Sabbath. In the last quarter, the morning of the 22nd, the third quarter moon is directly overhead, announcing the 22nd day as the third weekly Sabbath. The last Sabbath, the 29th day of the lunar month at dawn, the last sliver is seen in the east, announcing the 29th as a Sabbath. If a sliver is seen that morning, it will be followed by 2 days of new moon celebration, or 2 dark days. If the crescent was not seen, it was still the Sabbath, of course, but is followed by only 1 day of a new moon, 1 dark day. Now, if I read Psalms 104:19 correctly, the Father made the moon to regulate the seasons, the Moedim. Leviticus 23:1-3 calls the weekly Sabbath the first Moedim. There are 3 phases of the moon and 3 categories of day. Coincidence? There is the dark phase and the illuminated phases, the 4 quarter phases, which announce the Sabbaths. There are new moon days, work days, and Sabbaths. There are 2 dark days and 28 days showing an illuminated moon in each whole 30-day month in the lunar cycle. There are 2 days of new moon celebration and 4 7-day weeks each month for a total of 28 days in a lunar month. Is this a coincidence? If the illuminated days of the lunar cycle, the 28 days, announce the days of the 4 weeks, the 28 days, then the quarter phases will announce all 4 Sabbaths. And that leaves the 2 dark days after the last Sabbath each month as new moon days. 1 day, if it is a deficient or 29-day month. Isn't it amazing how all nature sings the wonder and majesty of Yah? And here are some of the verses over here on the left. And then again, the calendar showing new moon day and then the phases of the moon before the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th.
The fact that there is one day called the Sabbath demonstrates that you can't interrupt the week. To further illustrate this, let's go back to the beginning and look at things from Adam's perspective. Yahweh had just created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. The Sabbath was sanctified and just passed. All was beautiful and perfect. Now what?
Now what? Well, for starters, Feastkeeper forgot to include the unnumbered segment of time in Genesis 1:1-2 as part of creation. And when you build a premise based upon a false foundation, you will arrive at a false conclusion. Include all the data, Feastkeeper, and stop making assumptions.
The following day is obviously going to be a day for fulfilling Yahweh's command to work in the garden. If we were Adam, what do we do if 6 evenings and mornings go by? Obviously, we keep holy the seventh day, the one specific day that Yahweh commanded be kept holy. Then what? We have additional evenings and mornings coming, so what do? The obvious choice is that we work 6 more and rest on the seventh day. The recurring 7-day week cycle is born from the moment Yahweh rested on the seventh day and told man to do the same. It's very obvious and not difficult to understand at all.
What? And ignore the third category of day recorded in Genesis 1:1-2? Everything was established that first week of the first month of creation. The second month began with a new moon, and this month began with a new moon. Therefore, is it not wise to conclude that the first month of Earth's history also began with a new day, a new moon day? Since that new moon day was not included in the work week, none of the other new moon days have either.
Now, Scripture, Yahweh instituted the Lunar Sabbath at creation. After 3 weeks of following a recurring 7-day week with observing the one specific day that Yahweh called the Sabbath, 6 more evenings and mornings go by, and what do? We rest on one specific day, the seventh day.
Yes, that is correct.
Then what? This is where even lunar Sabbatarians differ one from another. Some say if we were Adam, we would rest on the 8th day and then rest the 9th day also if the moon isn't in new yet. But for what reason? This doesn't fit any pattern that Yahweh set forth in creation. We would no longer be keeping the Sabbath on that one specific day, the 7th day. To follow that pattern, to be interrupted, is to walk away from keeping the Sabbath on one specific day that Yahweh made holy, the 7th day.
My friend does err, not knowing the Scripture, nor the power of the Most High Yah. I agree, lunar observers disagree about new moon, but that does not mean the lunar calendar is in error. No one said Adam should rest on the 2 days after the last Sabbath of the first month. New moon days are neither rest days nor Sabbaths, except for the 7th one, and that's Feast of Trumpets. There was work done on new moon day, but there is no evidence that there was any commerce. Below is the non-commerce type work that was done on new moon day in Scripture. The foundation of the earth was laid on new moon day, that's Genesis 1:1, and this was a segment of time before the first work day of the first month of the first year of Earth's history. It is not named new moon day, but there is no other possible name or category for this day. The next one is the desert tabernacle was erected on new moon day, Exodus 40. And the next one is the relaying of the foundation of Solomon's temple was begun on new moon day, Haggai 1, 2, 8, and 12. Was this paid labor or labor of love? The Levites got no pay for erecting the desert tabernacle, and history tells us nothing about the labor for laying of the foundation of the temples in Israel. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. Is what work? Is this referring to a woman darning her family's socks or a man repairing a broken hoe? Or does it mean that candle makers only make candles on the 6 work days, the farmers only work in the fields for the 6 working days, and the tent makers only make tents on the 6 working days? There is a worship service that takes place on new moon day, but the entire day is not called holy. For the Sabbath, the whole day is called holy. We must read the context. If doing chores around the house counts as work that is prohibited on the Sabbath, and I believe it is, this writer believes it is, and why would this form of non-commerce work be prohibited on a new moon day? Can anyone find this prohibition in Scripture? If so, speak up. Only the seventh new moon is called a Sabbath and treated like one. The point is, feast keeper has to remove Ezekiel 46:1, as well as Amos 8:5, Isaiah 60:23, and 2 Kings 4:23 from Scripture, which proves that new moon days are not weekdays. Or she has to remove the several texts just listed, proving that there was some form of non-commerce labor performed on new moon days, because everything in this argument above is rendered null and void by these texts I just listed. Feast keeper wants his cake and wants to eat it too. But he's boxed in, surrounded by Scripture that supports what we are saying while disproving his arguments. And the person that wrote this feast keeper article and all the objections, of course, was Elijah, and it was a man, and Catherine is reading his part, so thank you, Catherine.
The Sabbatarians would say that Adam would have only needed to refrain from commerce and or working for money on the 8th and 9th days.
8th and 9th days of what? The week or the month?
But in Adam's day, there wasn't anyone around to buy or sell to, and there certainly wasn't anyone to pay Adam for any work. In fact, with this understanding, Adam could have resumed his tending of the Garden of Eden on the day after the Sabbath and would continue his work in the garden for a total of 7 or 8 days, then rested on the 9th day. The fact that he would continue working in the garden for 7 or 8 days violates the pattern that Yahweh set forth in Genesis. The 7th day passes by and is ignored with this understanding of Sabbath keeping.
Here, feast keeper is forcing his interpretation of the lunar calendar on his readers. This is not what Scripture says, and is not what lunar Sabbatarians believe. Again, in order to prove his point, feast keeper will have to remove Ezekiel 46:1, as well as Amos 8:5, Isaiah 66:23, and 2 Kings 4:23 from Scripture, which proves that the new moon days are not weekdays. Or he has to remove the several texts just listed, proving that there was some kind of non-commerce labor performed on new moon days, because everything in his argument above is rendered null and void by these texts I've just listed. Scripture supports what we are saying and disproves his arguments.
The truth is, Yahweh didn't rest 2 days, and he didn't rest for three days. He didn't say to do a half rest for 1 day or 2 days following the 4th Sabbath of the month. This is the commandment of men.
The truth is that Genesis 1:1-2 is the first new moon day of Earth's history, and Jehovah did not rest on it. The truth is that there are several examples of non-commerce labor being done on New Moon Day. The truth is that all manner of work is only prohibited on the 7th new moon, and that's Feast of Trumpets. So the truth is that when the Father says, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of Jehovah thy Elohim, the new moon day is not mentioned. Yet, for some reason, feast keeper is making doctrinal demands about something the Father is nearly silent on.
Yahweh made one specific day holy and 1 day only. He did no work for 6 days and rested on the 7th day.
This is another untruth in a long line of untruths. The 7th new moon is as holy as the weekly Sabbath, and so is Day of Atonement, and neither of these fall on a weekly Sabbath using the creation calendar.
It is his pattern that we're supposed to be following when it comes to keeping the holy Sabbath, as he said here in Exodus 20, verse 11. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
And over on the left here is the 7th month calendar, and it shows trumpets is new moon day, and it is a holy day, that one trumpets at one new moon day of the year. And also Day of Atonement is a holy day, and you'll see that over there as day 10. It appears that Jehovah either broke the pattern Feastkeeper is forcing upon us, or Jehovah never established any such pattern. Feast of Trumpets is treated as a weekly Sabbath, and so is Day of Atonement. The other annual Sabbaths actually coincide with a weekly Sabbath.
It says, Yahweh blessed the 7th day and hallowed it. Notice it does not say, Elohim blessed the 7th day, and sometimes the 8th and 9th days are blessed and sanctified too, depending on whether or not the new moon has shown up yet.
I agree. Only the 7th-day Sabbath is called holy, with the exception of the annual feast days. However, the worship called for on New Moon Day is on par with that of Sabbath. And this is Leviticus 23:24. And it shall come to pass that this is Isaiah, of course. And it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me. That's a worship day, saith Jehovah, Isaiah 66:23. Only the 7th new moon is ever called a Sabbath, and that's in Leviticus 23:24. Thus saith the sovereign Jehovah, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and on the new moon it shall be opened. And that's Ezekiel 46:1. My point is that based on the evidence, only the 7th new moon is a Sabbath. The others are days where a worship service, a holy convocation, is expected. But the entire new moon day is never called a Sabbath or holy, nor is it included in the regular work week. It is a third category of day. Feastkeeper is flailing away, trying to force his lack of understanding of what Scripture says about new moon days. New moon days are not the 8th and or 9th days of a week. They are not Sabbaths, except the 7th one, trumpets, and they are not numbered in the work week, meaning that they are not regular work commerce days. Do the math. There are 3 categories of days.
There is only one day out of the week that Yahweh sanctified, and that is the 7th day of the week.
I agree.
There is no such thing as an 8-day week or a 9-day week.
And that is correct. And Lunar Sabbath keepers don't observe 8 or 9-day weeks. This is an accusation made by a friend who refuses to understand or accurately describe the calendar presented in Scripture.
If there were, the pattern established at creation is thrown into confusion. A Sabbath could last not 1 day, but 1, 2, or possibly 3 days, thereby causing the 1-day sanctification pattern to disappear.
The new moon days are not Sabbaths. Only the 7th one, which we talked about, that's Feast of Trumpets. My friend is barking up the wrong tree again.
If one chooses to work for 7 or 8 days rather than rest on the extra days, it causes the 7th-day sanctification pattern to disappear.
Keeper is the one who's thrown into confusion here. And this pattern it was established at Creation Week. And you see here in the blue new moon days. That's from Genesis 1 to 2. And then you have your first weekdays, second weekday, third weekday, fourth weekday, fifth weekday, sixth weekday. And then the 7th is the Sabbath. So you have all those verses there, and it shows the Sabbaths as the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, and you have your new moon days that begin the month. The pattern established at creation is as follows. The Father commanded us to rest on the 7th day of the week. He never commanded us to rest every 7th day, The only reason feast keeper and every other Saturday Sabbath keeper believes that we are commanded to rest every seventh day is because of the calendar of heaven has been set aside, and they have embraced the calendar of Rome with its repeating without interruption 7-day weeks. There is not a shred of evidence in Scripture that supports the seventh day of a pagan week as a Sabbath of the Most High. And originally, Saturday was the first day of the pagan week, not the seventh. And this was officially changed by Constantine. And there is not a shred of evidence in Scripture that supports the seventh day of the Gregorian week as a Sabbath of the Most High. If there were, feast keeper and every other naysayer would have presented this evidence before they tried to disprove the lunar Sabbath.
In acknowledgement of this contradiction, some lunar Sabbath observers have started referring to the leftover days at the end of the month as non-days. In other words, those days at the end of the month aren't really days at all. They're just nothing. Of course, this is all they can really say.
They are nothing. They are new moon days, and they are days that count as days of the month. They are just not days of the week. Not because we say so, because Scripture says so. Feast keeper, what don't you understand about Ezekiel 46:1? Thus saith the sovereign Jehovah, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. Doesn't this text say that new moon day, the gate is open, cannot fall on one of the 6 work days when the gate is closed? Can a gate be open when it is shut, or shut when it's open? Doesn't this verse demand that the gate will be shut all 6 working days? Does this not preclude new moon from ever falling on one of the 6 working days? If not, why not? It appears to be pretty black and white, cut and dried to truth seekers.
But we know from Genesis 1 that a day consists of an evening and a morning. The days at the end of Yahweh's month are days with an evening and a morning, no matter how hard you try to ignore it. 2 or 3 evenings and mornings are going by, so they are indeed days. We can't just hide our heads in the sand and pretend they don't exist so that we can continue to believe what we want to believe.
We don't hide our heads in the sand, and we don't pretend these days do not exist. New moon days are vitally important to the creation calendar.
The truth is, the concept of a week extending to 8 or 9 days is foreign to Scripture. In fact, it's a direct contradiction of Scripture. In Hebrew, the number 7 and the word translated week are both rooted in the same Hebrew root verb, which simply means 7.
No one is extending the week to 8 or 9 days. You are, feast keeper. The only weeks in Scripture are 7 days in length, and 7-day weeks are what lunar Sabbath keepers observe.
The Strong's Lexicon defines week, number 7620, as Shabua or Shabuan, also, which is feminine, properly passive participle of 7650 as a denominative of 7651, literal 7, for example, a week, specifically of years, 7 week. And the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament states, Shabua, period of 7, a week, the Feast of Weeks. This term occurs 20 times in the Old Testament, always indicating a period of 7. Indeed, the word obviously comes to us from Sheba and could literally be translated always as 7 period. Notice that this reference says Shabua is derived from Sheba. The word translated 7 all throughout the Scriptures is Sheba. In 7651, Sheba, Sheba or masculine, Shebra. From 7650, a primitive cardinal number, 7 as the sacred full one. Also adverbially, 7 times by implication. A week by extension, an indefinite number. By, 7, fold, teenth, the teenth. We had the ending is th, times. Compare 7658. Shabua is just another form of the same word. Sheba is translated 7 over 350 times in the Scriptures. Clearly, the word week cannot be separated from the number 7. The entire reason a week is called a Shabua is because it always contains 7 days. This being the case, a week cannot be 8 or 9 days.
Well, I feel like I'm repeating myself because I am. But once again, there are no 8 or 9 day weeks in Scripture, and lunar Sabbath keepers do not observe 8 or 9 day weeks. I have to repeat myself because Feast Keeper continues to make the same erroneous statement over and over again, and repeating a lie multiple times will never make it true. And I'm not accusing our Feast Keeper friend of being a liar or telling lies. It's just we're trying to go with the facts in Scripture, right?
As we read in the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, the very word translated week literally means 7 period. It would be a contradiction to say in Hebrew an 8-day week, because you would to say an 8-day 7 period. Just like a dozen always means 12 in our language, a week always means 7 in Hebrew. Thus, an 8 or 9 day week is totally foreign to the Scriptures. To create one is to add to Yahweh's word. Of course, their solution is to not count those days and call them non-days, because that's all they can really say. Their pat answer is, those days aren't included in the count. How convenient.
Well, that's because Scripture excludes them from the weekly count. And no, it's not convenient. We have had to change everything in our lives to align ourselves with the Father's calendar. And it's not convenient at all. But some of us prefer to obey Yah rather than man.
Scripture says that the opposite. Scripture says that an evening and morning are one day, and one of the days they refer to as being a non-day is called a day in this verse. Haggai 1, verse 1 through 2, in the 2nd year of King Darius, in the 6th month on the 1st day of the month, the word of Yahweh came by Haggai the prophet to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, saying, Thus speaks Yahweh of hosts, saying, This people says, the time has not come, the time that Yahweh's house should be built. With such logic, there are 1 to 2 days in a month where you aren't even living within the context of a week.
Well, that's right. That's because Ezekiel 46:1 says so. And your point is?
On the 30th day of the month and the 1st day of the month, the week ceases to exist. The days are coming and going, but you need to pretend like they aren't there.
Oh, brother, he sets the table with the false presentation of what the lunar calendar is all about, and then shows you a verse that contradicts his false presentation. All this does is show that Feast Keeper is manipulating the lunar calendar concept in order to prove it false. He can't seem to answer for his faith without falsely presenting ours. No one who understands the creation calendar believes that the new moon days are not days of the year or month. They are simply not days of the week by royal proclamation, Ezekiel 46:1, and by example, Genesis 1:1-2, 2 verses that prove that the first day of the month is not included in the week. Can you find two verses that include the first day of the month and the week? Can you find two verses that say Saturday is the Sabbath? Can you find two verses that say the Sabbath is every seventh day in an unbroken cycle? Can you find two verses that say you will find the Sabbath of the Most High embedded in a pagan, papal, Roman, solar-only, man-made calendar? I've done my homework, Feast Keeper. Now do yours.
The truth is, if a week is interrupted by extra days, we are no longer keeping the Sabbath on the seventh day.
How so?
If we change the pattern that Yahweh set forth in creation, we are departing from Yahweh's example and keeping the Sabbath on some other day. The Sabbath would no longer be on the seventh day.
At creation is included in a segment of time before the first week. And so this chart again shows new moon days, and then it shows the first week, and the second week, the third week, and the fourth. This is the fourth day of the week, sorry. And every other creation event was a time-consuming event. Can you explain why Genesis 1, 1, and 2 was not also a time-consuming event? Make no mistake, we keep the seventh day of every week as a Sabbath, and there are just not the pagan planetary weeks that you observed. There's day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days of work and a seventh-day Sabbath.
Lunar Sabbath keepers wait on the day after the new moon to restart the week every month. But if weeks are determined by moon phases, this would mean that Yahweh would have needed to create the earth, create the moon, put it in orbit, and maybe even wait for a day after the new moon before starting the first week. But the moon wasn't even made and given its place in the heavens until the fourth day. Genesis 1, verses 16 to 19. Then Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Elohim set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So there was no sun to even give light on the earth, and no moon to reflect that light on the earth, thereby creating the moon phases, until the fourth day of the week. If we were to believe that each week is determined by moon phases, this would be yet another direct contradiction.
Well, Moses used two different words in the creation account, and one means created from scratch. That's Strong's 1254, bara, and the other doesn't. Created from scratch, bara, is found in Genesis 1:1. An example of the other word is found in verse 16. And Jehovah made two great lights. This is Genesis 1:16 through 19. The greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And Yah set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Jehovah saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. And now this word made in Strong's 6213 is used several times during the creation week. This is the Hebrew word asah. The Hebrew word asah means advanced upon or appointed, made, like making a bed in the morning. For example, he appointed asah the moon for seasons, Psalms 104:19. Here David barely nearly quotes Genesis 1:14, only he's very specific about the role of the moon. Seasons here in Psalms 104:19 is the same word found in Genesis 1:14, moed, appointed times or set feast. And there's a chart here to the left showing asah and bara. And You can pause the screen and look at that and see that asa is to create, and bara, let's see, asa means to appoint, and I know that. Asa is to appoint, and bara means created from scratch. If I made you a general in my army, does that mean you did not exist until I pinned the stars on your lapel? No, it means I advanced upon or appointed you as a general in my army, and you existed prior to your appointment. Here's a scenario. Jehovah created heaven and earth at a certain point in time. He doesn't call it a day because the timepiece that regulates the day was not yet ordained as such, and the sun, which regulates the day, had not yet been lit. Then on the first day of the week, Jehovah lights the sun, creating light, and of course, day and night as a result. If the heaven and earth were created during the initial event, then the planets, sun, moon, stars, etc., were created at the same time as well, since all these objects all dwell in the heavens. Are we not wresting Scripture when we make this statement? Because the underlying Hebrew could have been, and we are suggesting should have been, translated in this way. The Hebrew word for day, yam, literally means heat, as in from the sun. So the sun regulates the day, and of course the night by default. The first day of creation is called a day, yam, meaning that the light that was created came from the sun. The sun is the only light seen from earth that regulates the day, yam. Peacekeeper, can you or anyone reading this offer anything in Scripture that contradicts this statement? On day 4, Jehovah made, that's meaning advanced upon, not created from scratch, the luminaries that he had created earlier, when he created the heavens and the earth and then illuminated on day 1, and ordained them, appointed them as timekeepers. My friend, you are better at reading Hebrew than I ever will be. You know that what I'm saying about bara and asa is true. But will you admit the consequences of the meaning of these words? What this means is that new moon was a segment of time when the sun was not lit, listed in Genesis 1:1-2. It also means that the sun was lit on day 1 and has been regulating days ever since. It also proves that the sun, moon, and stars were not created from scratch on the 4th day of creation. Honestly permits only one answer, and this one answer is not what you have been sharing with your readers.
If Yahweh wanted to set a pattern of lunar Sabbath keeping for us, and the pattern is to be found in his creation of the world, why would he not create the world in one lunar month, not resting every 7th day, but resting on certain days of the month so that we can have an accurate pattern of Sabbath keeping to go by?
You are putting Jehovah in a box. He does not have to answer to you or me. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith Jehovah. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts your thoughts. Isaiah 55:8-9. Trust in Jehovah with all thine heart, and lean not unto your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs 3:5-6. My friend, you are not trusting in Jehovah. You are leaning on your own understanding. Peacekeeper, I respect you, but true respect cannot tolerate false doctrine.
Of course, Yahweh could have created the heavens and the earth in an instant, but instead he set in motion the concept of a week so that we would follow his example in working 6 days and resting on the 7th. The lunar Sabbath violates this pattern at the end of every month by doing physical labor 6 days and resting on the 7th, 8th, and possibly 9th days, or doing physical labor 7 to 8 days and resting on the 9th day.
confuse me, but Jehovah did create heaven and earth in an instant. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis 1:2. Do you suppose that when Jehovah created heaven and earth that they took their sweet time coming into being? Quite frankly, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. I believe Yah spoke and bang, it came to pass. The week that followed was just the Father setting things in order on the earth that He created in Genesis 1:1. Peacekeeper, you aren't listening. New moon days are not rest days, except the seventh one. No, that would be Feast of Trumpets. Nor are they part of the work week. A worship service was expected on new moon, and yes, certain labor can be done on new moon day, but there is no evidence that new moon days were commerce days, and none that includes the new moon day in the 7-day work week. 6 days of work plus 1 rest day. Though far from a perfect illustration, if you can wrap your mind around the concept of a Protestant midweek service, aka prayer meeting, then you might be able to understand the concept of new moon day. New moon is a hybrid day, a third category of day, a day which certain labor can be done, yet requires a set-apart convocation.
Leviticus 23, verse 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. The most logical and clear choice here is to do just what Yahweh said, work 6 days and rest on the 7th. This is the pattern given for us in the Scriptures.
And that is the pattern we follow. You just described the 6 working days and the weekly Sabbath. You did not mention, nor did you leave any room for the new moon day in your description. That is because new moon is not included in the week found in Leviticus 23:3, Genesis 1:3-31, nor Exodus 20:8-11.
Yahweh never specified certain days of the month for His regular Sabbath.
Oh, yes, He did.
But a specific day of the month is given for each of His feast day Sabbaths. Does this not speak volumes?
Exodus 12, 16, and 19 reveals Sabbaths fell on the 15th of the month for 3 consecutive months. The Sabbaths in chapters 12 and 16 were indeed specified by the Most High Yah. The Sabbaths in chapter 19 just copy the pattern established at creation and repeated in Exodus 12 and 16. Exodus 12 reveals that Israel was released from bondage on Abib 15, the 15th day of the first month. It is not called the Sabbath in Exodus 12, but later Scripture reveals the nature of this day. Leviticus 23, 4-8 proves that Passover Abib 14 is preparation day for Abib 15, the Sabbath of unleavened bread. And some say that Abib 21 is a Sabbath, but this is not the case. Scripture is not saying that the 21st is a annual Sabbath. Okay, and the 22nd is a Sabbath, but okay, so we'll just go forward. The first day of the feast and the 7th day of the week in context are one and the same. The 21st day of the 6th of the week, and of course the 7th day of a 7-day feast. But the 7th day spoken of in Exodus 13:6 is called a Hag, Strong's 2282, which is used 62 times in Scripture and is only used to refer to the pilgrimage feast days found in Exodus 23:14-17. In this case, Abib 15 is not referring to the last day of the feast, rather the first, which is the 7th day of the week. This Hag can only be the 15th day of Abib. See also Deuteronomy 5:12-15 and Leviticus 23:6-8. And this is a calendar of the Passover month, showing Passover preparation day the 14th, and the Sabbath is the 15th. And then you have your 6 working days. You finish your unleavened bread feast on the 21st, and the 22nd is the Sabbath. The Sabbath commanded in Exodus 20 is linked to Creation Week. The 4th commandment listed in Deuteronomy 5 is listed to the deliverance of Israel. Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as Jehovah thy Elohim hath commanded thee. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of Jehovah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thine ass, nor any of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Jehovah thy Elohim brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore Jehovah thy Elohim commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Deuteronomy 5:12-15. I submit to you that this 7th day is Abib 15, and it is not only an annual Sabbath, but a weekly Sabbath as well. The 15th is without question a Sabbath, meaning that the 22nd of the first month is also a Sabbath. Exodus 16 is the first place where the word Sabbath is used in Scripture. And we went through a lot of this, Exodus 12, 16, and 19 in our other parts, 1, 2, and 3. So you can go back and look at those. But in Exodus 16, the first verse, Jehovah is speaking to Moses and Aaron on the 15th day of the 2nd month and gives them what turns out to be this simple math equation. From day 15, add 6 days of manna, and that equals 21. Next, the next day is the 22nd, is the Sabbath. First Sabbath, Israel was to collect 1 portion of manna from the 16th to the 20th, and a double portion on the 21st, because the morrow was the Sabbath. Here, Jehovah spells out, specified that the Sabbath would fall on the 22nd day of the 2nd month. If the 22nd is a Sabbath, so is the 15th, as well as the 8th and the 29th. The first day of the month is New Moon Day, not a Sabbath. And so here is showing the Sabbath when he said manna would come on the 16th, and it would be a single portion every day from 16 to 20, and then 21 a double portion because the following day is a Sabbath, the 22nd. And that is up here in this chart also. Exodus 19:1 also proves the children of Israel arrived on Sinai on the 16th day of the 3rd month. Please read the context. Moses indicates that the children of Israel rested at Rephidim the 15th day of the 3rd month. The root word for Rephidim means rest, and this passage says that they arrived at the wilderness of Sinai the same day of this month that they left Egypt 2 months earlier. If you remember, Israel got as far as Sukkot, the 15th, and actually left Egypt on the 16th, Numbers 33, 3-6. So Israel arrived at Sinai on the 16th, and Moses was immediately summoned up the mount. Jehovah told Moses to go back down the mountain and to tell the people to consecrate themselves, for on the 3rd day of the week, that would be the 18th, he would come down on the mount in a cloud. And that's all found in Exodus 19:10-11. If the 18th is the 3rd day, then the 16th is the 1st day, meaning that they were resting in Rephidim on the Sabbath, the 15th, which is the weekly Sabbath, and it looks like this. Here's your 15, 16, and here is the 3rd day, the 18th. So amazing, isn't it? There's always harmony in the truth. There are several other Sabbaths that were specified to fall on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the month, but these 3 witnesses should be more than sufficient. Are you still there, Catherine?
I apologize. Leviticus 23, verse 3 through 7. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of Yahweh in all your dwellings. These are the feasts of Yahweh, holy convocations which you shall proclaim at their appointed times. On the 14th day of the first month at twilight is Yahweh's Passover, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread to Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no customary work on it. Notice also that Yahweh needed to inform us that the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, being the 15th day of the first month, is a day that no customary work is to be done. If indeed the 15th day of each month is already a regular Sabbath, why would he even need to inform us that it's a day of rest to begin with?
True, but then the weekly Sabbath had been the weekly Sabbath since creation. But Jehovah still felt it prudent to spell it out again in Exodus 20.
The regular Sabbath is a memorial of the 7 days of creation. The holy days scattered throughout the year are observed on certain days of the year as a memorial to other acts of Yahweh, such as the anniversary of when the children of Israel went out of Egypt, etc. But the Sabbath is given for us to remember the creation of the world and rest as Yahweh did. We need to do that. We need to do what he did and do all our work on 6 days, but rest on one specific day, the seventh day. The day that Yahweh made holy and commanded that we remember is one specific day, the seventh day, and we are to keep it holy.
Yes, we concur. The Sabbath commandment is a command to keep a Sabbath that just happens to be lunar based on scriptural, historical, and natural evidence. And indeed, it was kept by the faithful patriarchs throughout history. In fact, the teachings in Genesis 1 and 2 are the most compelling. Not only does it prove the lunar calendar, it destroys the pagan papal calendar embraced by feastkeeper. There is not a shred of evidence that supports the seventh day of the Gregorian week as a Sabbath of the Most High. If there were, feastkeeper would have presented this evidence by now instead of trying to disprove the lunar calendar. So parts 1 through 4 now, we've covered the Lunar Sabbath defense, and this is just addressing the first 40 pages. This is an 87-page article, and the next part is about the count to Pentecost. So I urge you to go ahead and click on the link and read the rest of this article for yourself. And we'll go back to Isaiah 66:23, wonderful promise. It shall happen that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, says Jehovah. So to access more information about the Sabbath and the calendar in the heavens, about feast days, because we are feast keepers too, and about his appointed days, please go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. And also, you can scroll down to the bottom of the events page for fellowship, because we do conference calls every new moon and Sabbath, Yah willing. So thank you so much for being here today, and I thank you so much, Catherine. And I hope that you will go back, if you've missed any of these parts, that you will watch parts 1 through 4. And thank you.